The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
If you're a manager and you're not using the power of one-to-one meetings because you're not sure how to do them, get ready. I'm Jerry Roberts, and at 7:20 a.m. on The Ray Gibson Show, we'll give you and your workers the formula for making those meetings work right.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
If you haven't tuned into the Ray Gibson Show, you've missed a lot.
Insta Guam has been our theme the last couple years that we've been promoting out. But Insta Spot is actually is another program, and it's actually embedded within the Shop Guam app. So if you guys haven't downloaded it yet, I highly recommend you do it.
Don't miss out. Tune in every weekday morning from 6 to 10 for the Ray Gibson Show on Guam's only FM News Talk Superstation, 93.3 The Point. The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
This is a Fox News alert. Puerto Rico's governor calls it quits. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. Puerto Ricans are celebrating this morning. After nearly 2 weeks of intense protest with tens of thousands of people demanding Puerto Rico's governor step down, Ricardo Rosselló announces he's resigning effective August 2nd.
I hope that this decision reflects the will of the citizens of Puerto Rico and is for the well-being of Puerto Rico.
Rosselló speaking with a translator just before midnight. He's stepping down amid a host of problems for the U.S. island territory, a bankrupt government, poor response to Hurricane Maria, and the final hurdle, the release of his obscene online chats with advisors. Former special counsel Robert Mueller spent much of Wednesday testifying before Congress, and Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi says the investigation is not over.
The Mueller investigation could not do the president's personal or business connections, and one of those connections could be to the Russians, and that's what we want to find out.
Republican leader Kevin McCarthy says it's time to move on.
We have a challenge in our health care when it comes to surprise billing to thousands of Americans. Again, they've only focused on the Mueller investigation. Today is the end of that chapter. Today is to put politics aside and put people first. Put this country first.
And President Trump's taking a victory lap, calling the hearings nonsense.
The performance was obviously not very good. He had a lot of problems. But what he showed more than anything else is that this whole thing has been 3 years of embarrassment and waste of time for our country.
You can hear more from President Trump on Fox's Hannity Thursday night at 9. This is Fox News.
Hafaday, this is Congressman Nicholas. Our office is currently visiting our villages, providing contact information for our office and taking any inquiries we may be of service with. All vehicles and staff are appropriately identified for your safety. Please feel free to let our constituent outreach team know how we can be of service to you, and thank you for your kindness.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
Hey, welcome to this Subway ad for the new club collection. How do you want it?
I'll take a book club.
Absolutely.
So, last week we sunk our teeth into Subway's meaty new release, the Steak Club.
I didn't finish it yet.
Oh, not again, Sandra. This week, it's the new Southwest Chicken Club, also by Subway. No spoilers, but there's a tasty twist.
Jalapeno cheddar bread and guacamole?
Sandra, get out. Subway, make it what you want.
Good ending.
Limited time only at participating restaurants.
Just hours after one federal judge refuses to block the Trump administration's new asylum rules, another federal judge puts a stop to them temporarily.
The Trump administration's new asylum rule says migrants who want to apply for asylum here in the U.S. must first apply in the country they arrived in initially or traveled through. For many Central American migrants, that would be Mexico. ACLU attorney Lee Gallant argued before Judge John Tiger in San Francisco Wednesday.
If this rule were to take effect, there will be chaos. People will not know where to seek asylum. People will be sent back to danger. We have expressed to the court that we believe there would be serious harm to the individuals who will not be allowed to apply for asylum.
The Trump administration says the new rules would end abuse and exploitation of the asylum process. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
North Korea tests 2 more missiles. South Korea says one of the 2 missiles flew 270 miles before landing in the waters between the Koreas and Japan. That's farther than first thought. South Korea sees the test as pressure on Washington to restart the stalled nuclear talks with North Korea. Breaking a world record is an incredible feat on its own, but it's even more impressive when the record belonged to Michael Phelps.
Now it's just a matter of if he's going to get under Phelps's time, and it looks like he is. 151.51 is gone.
Audio courtesy of the Olympic Channel. 19-year-old Hungarian swimmer Krzysztof Milak crushed the competition Wednesday in the 200-meter butterfly at the World Championships in South Korea, finishing in just under 1 minute 51 seconds, shattering Michael Phelps' mark from the 2009 World Championships by 78/100ths of a second. Milak became the first man to break a Phelps world record since Milorad Kavic took the 100-meter fly back at the 2009 Worlds. Phelps took the record back the next day. Matt Napolitano, Fox News.
And repeating our top story, Puerto Rico's governor, Ricardo Rosselló, resigns. I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
Get 2 Pepsi 12-packs for only $8.99 when you fuel up on $35 or more of premium high-performance fuel. Conditions apply. See stores for details. Circle K. Take it easy. Get a Pepsi 12-pack for only $3.49 when you fuel up on $35 or more of premium high-performance fuel. Conditions apply. See store for details. Circle K. Take it easy. Get 2 Coke 12-packs for only $8.99 when you fuel up on $35 or more of premium high-performance fuel. Conditions apply. See stores for details. Circle K. Take it easy.
Worry less and stay connected when traveling for business. With Docomo Pacific's Data to Go, you can use your local data abroad, whether you're accessing emails, surfing the web, or just keeping in contact with your family and friends. For just $10 a day on any postpaid plan, you can get access to any of our 17 Data to Go destinations. Don't wait. Call 688-2677 or email businesssales@DocomoPacific.com to make sure your account is Data to Go ready. You plus Docomo Pacific, better together.
Talk Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I start that way every day. I think the reasons are pretty generally understood, but repeating for emphasis, calling attention to the Bill of Rights contained in our United States Constitution and how important they are to our way of life here under the American flag, and reminding everyone that we must be vigilant because the Bill of Rights will not defend themselves. They require a certain vigor on the part of the citizenry to make sure that the Bill of Rights remain in place and secure and protect our individual freedoms. Also, I do it to remind myself, because the Fourth Estate has an important role in the protection of those individual rights. The Fourth Estate being, of course, the media, of which I consider myself a part. Just to make it absolutely clear, I'm not a reporter. I don't objectively report on the news. I've got something better than that. I subjectively give you my opinion on the news. Some folks who hold themselves out as reporters do the same thing, but when they do it, it's not honest. When I do it, it is honest. I'm not trying to play hide the ball or present something as objective fact when it's actually my opinion. But it takes all kinds in the Fourth Estate to make sure that our freedoms are maintained, that the rights secured and protected by the Bill of Rights are still there. That's why I start out with the Second Amendment every day. I don't have a interesting tidbit on the Second Amendment for you today. So from here, we'll go right straight to, where do we go next, Real Joe Cruz?
Zemi Ikutni.
Zemi Ikutni. The Tall Tales version of Meet the Press, where I examine the editorials of our two daily newspapers, search them with a fine-tooth comb for grammatical errors and errors in language usage, for misstated facts, for crackpot theories, etc., and in the process evaluate each of them, trying to determine which, if either, is the better of the two. Having made that determination, I get out my blue pencil and mark the better of the two with a coveted blue star. And as I've remarked before, if you're close enough to the to the edifice of the winning newspaper, you'll probably be able to hear the champagne corks pop when the announcement is made as to who got that blue star. A routine part of this part of the program has been my beating up on the Daily News for not running homegrown editorials. Yesterday they ran one about dogs, which wasn't all bad because one of our Tall Tales posse, a certain doctor of veterinary medicine, a Dr. Tom, what's his last name?
Poole.
Dr. Tom Poole.
Yes, sir.
Called in and shed a little light on some of the ethical dimensions of animal experimentation. But it would have been a little different if it had been about our dogs. Okay, so today the Daily News actually ran an editorial, believe it or not, about Guam. Whoa, yeah. And here is how it goes. Evident we merit more. Feds must increase compact impact reimbursement. While we on Guam appreciate the amount of federal funding we receive on an annual basis, it's been evident for years that we don't get the amount the island deserves. This week, the Department of Interior's Office of Insular Affairs announced that it had provided Guam with $106.7 million in payments and grants in 2018, as well as additional support for education and construction. Doug Domenech, the Interior Assistant Secretary for Insular Affairs, said this illustrates the significant impact federal dollars, he says, illustrates the significant impact federal dollars has on Guam. Shouldn't that be have on Guam, Real Joe Cruz?
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Well, there's one right there. As well as insular economies. Interior Secretary David Bernhardt said, quote, the U.S. Interior is proud of the role that we play in supporting fellow Americans in territories and our friends in the freely associated states. But the bulk of the money was $77 million in Section 30 income taxes, money that comes from taxes withheld from paychecks of federal and military personnel who work on Guam. That money is owed to Guam and not a gift or grant. I should have said is owed to Guam and is not a gift or a grant. The Office of Insular Affairs stated its funds directly supported 3,363 jobs, helped Guam provide public services, and helped offset the educational costs of hosting regional migrants. The report, which is prepared by RTI International, also stated, quote, Guam continues to face challenges in implementing effective government, health care, and education systems. That's because the federal government's help, particularly when it comes to compensating the island for the cost of hosting regional migrants falls far short of what's needed. The U.S. provided just $34 million in fiscal 2019 Compact Impact grant funding. Guam got $16.8 million, or just a fraction of what is spent. Guam and the other affected jurisdictions have said for years the cost of hosting regional migrants is far higher than reimbursement. The U.S. Government Accountability Office has said Guam and the other jurisdictions use unreliable, even faulty methods to count migrants and assess impact. But it is yet to create an acceptable method for counting migrants or a formula for calculating financial impact. Once it does so, Guam and the other jurisdictions will be able to present compact impact numbers that can't be argued with. This would make for more reasonable reimbursements. Well, yeah, pretty good, Daily News. And I'd have to say that I concur in most of what you're saying. And by way of a little background here, you know that there are several islands to the south of us named roughly the Palau Islands, the Marshall Islands, and the Caroline Islands, all of which had been Spanish colonies. In World War I started. Germany, as you were, they had been Spanish colonies. When Spain lost the Spanish-American War, it sold those colonies to Germany. Ach du Lieber. Yeah. For Deutschmark. Yeah. And the Germans ran those islands until 1914, when World War II broke out. As you were, yeah. When World War I broke out. Yeah, getting my... I'm sounding like Mueller here. Getting my wars mixed up. Yeah. Real Joe Cruz, do you know which one came first, World War I or World War II?
I believe it was one, sir.
Yeah, World War I came first. Yeah, so World War I came first. And Japan declared war on Germany and swooped in and took all of those islands from the Japanese. So after the war, the League of Nations, another useless international organization, granted Japan a mandate over those 3 island groups and all of the Marianas except for Guam. So the Japanese ran that part of the world until the end of World War II. At the end of World War II, the islands were folded into what was called a trust territory. The United States was the trustee. Now, the United States did not exercise sovereignty over those islands. I suppose they had a certain inherent sovereignty, since no other country could exercise sovereignty over them during the time that they were United Nations in a United Nations trust territory. So a few folks that have been around here for a while remember the old trust territory government. Trust territory capital was on Capitol Hill in Saipan. There were district headquarters in each of the districts, each of the island groups. We had the Trust Territory Hotel on Guam, about where Cars Plus is right now. That was a ramshackle wooden hotel operated by the Trust Territory government. So when people came out here from the U.S. mainly and were on their way to a post in the Trust Territory, they bunked at the Trust Territory Hotel until they could catch a flight out to the Trust Territory. That hotel at one time, believe it or not, was actually the capital of the Trust Territory of the Pacific Islands. The capital started out in Hawaii, and I was thought, well, you know, if we're going to have this Trust Territory, the headquarters ought to be somewhere out there in that area. Let's move it to Guam. So they moved it to Guam and into what later on became the Trust Territory Hotel. In 1962, the United States shut down what had been euphemistically referred to as the Naval Technical Training Unit. And the Naval Technical Training Unit had that office building and the housing up on Capitol Hill for naval personnel. And there's a little bit more. It's kind of an interesting story. The Naval Technical Training Unit was actually a CIA operation. The Navy ran it for the CIA, and it was used to train Chinese people from Taiwan, train them in the arts of infiltration so that they could infiltrate mainland China and take mainland China back for the Chinese nationalist government. Well, we pulled the plug. The U.S. pulled the plug on that in 1962. The Naval Technical Training Unit moved out, and the Trust Territory headquarters moved from Guam to Capitol Hill on Saipan. It's not that Capitol Hill complex is now part of the Northern Marianas government. So when it was decided that the United States could start letting loose of those islands in the Trust Territory, the United States sat down and negotiated deals with all four of the island groups. The Northern Marianas, of course, cut a deal with the United States to become a U.S. territory called the Commonwealth of the Northern Marianas. And the other three became freely associated states. They're independent countries, but they have covenants of free association, which is just another way of saying treaties. And as part of those treaties, part of the deal is that U.S. could use those islands for military purposes, and the island governments wouldn't let anyone else come in and use them for military purposes. And people from the United States could move to any one of those island groups, any one of those island nations, if he so desired, go into business, do whatever. But people from those island nations could come to Guam as what are called habitual migrants. They could come without a visa, just a passport and a ticket, and that's all any one of those people from the islands would need. No visa requirements, no entry restrictions, no quotas, etc. And those people, the habitual residents, could stay as long as they wanted. Another sweetener in the deal was that the citizens of those three island nations could enlist in the U.S. Armed Forces. And a whole lot of them have, because it's a great economic opportunity for people from the freely associated states. So the United States got everything it wanted out of the deal. Basically, what it wanted was denial of those islands to any other foreign power. A little geopolitical placeholding there, as it were. The United States didn't want to see China or any other country move into those islands. And we got it. Unfortunately, those of us living here in the island of Guam, the U.S. territory of Guam, have had to pay a pretty heavy price for the United States diplomatic coup in the freely associated states, because most of the habitual migrants come here. Most of the habitual residents come here. It's close. For people from the FAS, it's great medical care, economic opportunity, etc. And by any reckoning, it costs us a lot of money to host those habitual residents here. The United States says, don't worry about it, we'll reimburse you. And then they gave us a catch-22. So the catch-22 is this: we'll reimburse you all your costs. Tell us how much it costs you to host those habitual residents. So we come up with a figure, and the Department of the Interior said, no, you didn't do it right. That's not how you calculate those figures. So our response is, okay, how should we do that? And the answer is, we have to do it right. That's all. So we've been stumbling around this for years and years and years. They keep telling us we're not doing it right, but they haven't established a system that would allow us to do it right. A classic catch-22. If you happen to be fortunate enough. Did you read that book, Real Joe Cruz? catch-22?
No, sir, but I understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, well, good. That's a lot of times you don't.
It's a rare occasion, sir.
Very good. So I guess I've got Marquez on the line, huh? Okay, Marquez, tell me something about the freely associated states that I don't already know. That's a heavy order.
Buenas, señor.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, man, I like what you had to say. That was good history lesson on the Germans, speaking the Deutsch, and the Japanese, and the trust territories. So I guess that hotel, that place, that's the old Micronesian hotel.
That's what it was.
Ah, that's what it was.
I thought I'd better give you that history about the German involvement. Otherwise, you'd think I was a Dummkopf.
No, I know you're brilliant.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
but no, that was informative. That stuff that I was just doing some Ancestry.com stuff, and I was looking at a manifest of aliens from Guam to the United States in 1940. And that was my grandfather, grandmother, and my mom's brothers and sisters. But it was interesting, they used the word aliens. And the reason why my grandfather left is that he thought the Japanese were going to come back. And so in 1948, they made that trip on a U.S. vessel back to the States, and he worked for Anderson Air Force Base when he was here on Guam as a comm person, civilian. And it's interesting how all of this is interwoven with the FSA, with FSM, and all of us were, I know some people don't like to be called Micronesians, but we are Micronesians, even though that silver, that special black trim line cuts us out of all of it, but we're in the heart of Micronesia. And, I wanted to say that, the great Dr. E.V. Hill, in his one message that he was talking about the exodus of the Jews from Egypt, he said something like this. He said that God will get it to you if he can get it through you. And that's the same thing maybe what the U.S. is doing. They can get us the money if they can get it through us. And unfortunately, a lot of times they give us the money and then we, I don't know what we do with the money, but it doesn't go to where it's supposed to go. And so they want accountability. And, maybe what we're missing is, we keep coming up with accounts, but we're not showing the benefits either. We don't offset the benefits because a lot of these Micronesians do work, our brothers and sisters from the outer islands, and they do produce labor and they have day jobs and this and that. So, and they pay into the Social Security system. And I don't know if they're going to even be eligible to take out from the Social Security system.
If they live long enough, yeah.
Yeah. But, there's an offset there, and maybe we're just not counting it correctly. And they're being cautious. I think they're setting aside the money. They want to give us the Compact Impact money, but they want to make sure that it gets to the people and to the programs that we say it's going to go to, and not just the general fund and, where that goes once it gets there. We decide to redistribute it because we have too much money and we're going to give it to nonprofits now and things like that instead of fixing up the bathrooms and the beaches and all of that. But, whatever. Didn't need to go off your subject there. But, Micronesians and us being at the heart of Micronesia have been seen a lot of things, World War I, World War II, the Spanish era, colonization, and so on. But that's not different from the Irish, who also were colonized. And, there's many races and many people who have suffered many tragedies and many things.
Well, Marcus, the word, pardon me, the word indigenous is now the latest buzzword. You didn't, 10, 15 years ago and longer, you never heard the word indigenous. But now it's right up there with the big 3 C's: Chamorro, culture, and colonialism. And
so Cocoa Bird. What about K?
but
they're indigenous.
but the history of the world and the peoples of the world is movement.
Right.
It is part
dynamic.
It is part of the human makeup that humans have always been on the move. You know, developing the first civilization in what's now called the Fertile Crescent, migrating westward out of there and all over the world. And so by the time we get up to the year 2019, it's pretty hard to find any group of people that have been in the same place where they started, which is probably Africa, up till this time, because it's part of the human psyche to keep moving.
Exactly.
So that's
culture is not a static thing; it's a dynamic thing. Language is not static; it's dynamic. And if I don't know, some people seem to want to go back to a yesteryear and just think that somehow is going to
preserve the culture.
Right.
Yeah.
And
well, you know, there is a certain group like Anne Marie Arceo who want to go all the way back to 1987, so that we only do the kind of dancing that we've been doing since then.
Oh yeah, that'd be good.
Got a break coming up. Thanks for calling, Marcus.
All right.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Weekday shopping just got exciting. Join the Agania Shopping Center's Shop and Win on Weekdays promo. Shop or dine at any ASC store or restaurant on weekdays from now till October 31st. Show your receipt at the ASC booth and win instantly. Every $20 spent gets you an entry form to win big at the monthly draws, including round-trip tickets to Manila, $500 ASC gift certificates, and more. See posters and print ads for more. Special thanks to Sky Zone, Fundamental Riders, Vince Jewelers, and Wendy's.
We know too well the inconvenience of not having power after a storm. You worry about the food in the freezer going bad. Nights get hot. It's hard finding comfort when going to sleep. These are realities. But with solar and battery storage from Micronesia Renewable Energy, these realities can be a thing of the past. The solar works during the day and the batteries power your home at night. Call 632-2613 to see how solar plus battery storage can make life a little more convenient. MRE, the smarter choice.
Mezcla's featured special for July, Seafood Lao Lao, a medley of salmon, shrimp, scallops, and fresh spinach wrapped in tea leaves, steamed to order, topped with soy butter sauce and your choice of starch. Visit Mezcla in Agotnia and now in Tumon at the Grand Plaza Hotel. For reservations, please call 969-2652.
We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. Call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
So here we are back again on Tall Tales. I just want to put my 2 cents worth in on the word Micronesia and Micronesians. I know it sounds very inclusive. Inclusive. You're supposed to be inclusive, real Joe Cruz. You know, when Sheila brought in some tacos, she was very inclusive. She gave me one. That's my kind of inclusivity, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, but you got to be inclusive. So we think that by saying, well, you know, we're all Micronesians, that's being inclusive. But I would put a little different gloss on the term Micronesia. The terms Polynesia, and I went through this a couple days ago, pardon my repetition, but the terms Polynesia, Micronesia, and Melanesia were tools used by European cartographers as they mapped the Pacific. And they saw 3 large groups of islands that they described with those names. Polynesia means many islands. Melanesia means black islands. That's because the people that live in Melanesia have very dark skins, places like New Hebrides and Guadalcanal and places like that, Melanesia. Micro means, guess what? Small. So Micronesia means small islands. And our group of, Guam is the largest island in Micronesia. And as islands go, it's not that big. So that's why this area is called Micronesia. Not because there's any affinity of any kind amongst the various people who live on these islands. If you go down to the Federated States of Micronesia, if you go to Pohnpei and Koshai, which are relatively close together, you'll find that there are two really different places that have distinctive languages, cultures, whatever. Palau and Yap, the same thing. There's not much commonality amongst those islands, and that's the way it is with islands. Islands, in a time when their transportation was in its infantile stages, didn't have an awful lot of commonality. So to say that the people of the various islands in the Federated States all have this affinity, I don't know. In fact, it's an interesting experiment to see how those island groups are going to get along together in the Federated States of Micronesia. We've already had one group of islands, Chuk, or as Jimmy would say, Juke, that wanted to secede from the Federated States. So we're all, people who live on Guam, Chamorros, and the people that live in the Federated States and in the Republic of the Marshall Islands and in the Republic of Palau. Yeah, they all live in Micronesia. But to say, well, we're all Micronesian sounds good, and it's very inclusive, but what it amounts to is ascribing to a group identification assigned by European cartographers maybe 300 years ago. So you can make of that what you will. Okay, so much for the daily news and for the Marcus part of the show. On to the Post. Let's continue sharing, documenting war survivor stories that inspire and teach. And then it says, let's not procrastinate. One day it may be too late. And what the Daily News is talking about, what the Post is talking about is that we had many people in the community who shared personal photos and stories of before and after the Japanese occupation in World War II, how heartwarming it was. We're a stronger community because of the struggles of our parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents experienced on Guam, etc. Within generations of families, many stories are kept as a memory and in boxes and trunks of old photos. And then these treasures will be lost in time if we don't keep proper records of them. In our busy lives, many of us will be tempted to delay recording Grandpa and Grandma or Mom and Dad as they share their oral history. Let's not procrastinate. One day it might not be too late. I think that's a really good idea. And as soon as I get some time, I'm going to start doing it. Oh, wait a minute. That would be procrastinating, wouldn't it, Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yeah, and then the Daily News says, at the Post, we at the Post will do our part. For as long as we get contributions through the editor at postguam.com, we will publicly share them, and they will live online and in our paper. So I guess maybe I'll go home and dig through my box of old pictures or scrapbooks and see if I can find some pictures of, I don't like to talk about myself here, Real Joe Cruz, but yeah.
Yep, it's about you.
Yeah. See if I could find some pictures of myself in World War II, like the day I left for kindergarten or...
Oh, that would be nice.
Yeah. I do remember this. I had this little soldier suit, which wasn't uncommon for little kids in World War II.
Really?
Yeah. I think I even have a picture of that somewhere. Yeah. I was only about yay tall, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Young Bob.
Yeah. Little Bob.
Little Bob.
Bobby, in fact.
Bobby.
Yeah.
Bobby boy.
Yeah. Yeah, so I've mentioned this before. I'm a World War II survivor. I was born in 1938. I was just really, really lucky that I got to do my surviving in the mainland of the United States instead of on Guam. Okay, so it's Blue Star time. What the Daily News, what the Post says is nice. It could have been more along the lines of a news story and an invitation from the Post. I don't really see it. It's borderline editorial material. The Daily News, however, makes a point. It's got facts. It's got a workable theory. Good for the Daily News. It tends to be something I agree with, which is always worth something. So today, the coveted Blue Star goes to the Daily News. Yeah, that doesn't happen very often. So that takes the Daily News up to 45. 45 times the Daily News has received the coveted Blue Star to 129 for the Guam Daily Post. Yeah. Okay, so here's the card for today. Ethics Commission versus CSC, which is something that I didn't want to start on yesterday, because I didn't think I had enough time to do it justice. But this item will be a vehicle for me to forecast how I think our Ethics Commission is going to work. Not going to be very good news, but you want to listen to it anyhow. And the next on my card, I have Democrats versus Mueller. Now, there are some folks out there, perhaps first-timers out there in our international radio listening audience, who are going to say, Mueller? Who in the heck is Mueller? Just like whenever I hear this name Mueller. Who in the heck is Mueller? The guy's name is Mueller. And if he can't even pronounce his own name correctly, Mueller, not Mueller, then you shouldn't have been too surprised when he really flubbed it at the hearings yesterday. You know, it's kind of like me pronouncing my name Klitzkie or something like that. If I couldn't even pronounce my own name correctly, or like the gentleman over here in the control room, if he pronounced his name Fo Joe Cruz, what would we think of him? No. Okay, so it's Democrats versus Mueller. And then, as I committed myself, I've got a squad report from the squad about the squad. And then the next item on the card is Lou versus our squad. And then finally, I've got Che versus the United States, if we get that far. Okay, so Ethics Commission versus the Civil Service Commission. Yesterday, I spent a little time talking about the huge scandal that's going on in Honolulu. And just to bring you up to speed here, if you weren't listening yesterday, or if you forgot, the chief of police of Oahu was found guilty of some serious crimes, as was his wife, who was the chief deputy prosecutor in the city of Honolulu attorney's office. And what they were found guilty of revolved around their framing the wife, Mrs. Kealoha, her uncle, framing him for stealing a mailbox. And the chief of police, her husband, used all kinds of police resources to make this frame work, without going into all the details, to help her frame her uncle. The reason that she wanted to frame her uncle is that she is accused of stealing a lot of money from her uncle and from her mother, which will be the subject of another trial coming up this fall. A huge, huge scandal. There's an outfit in Honolulu called Civil Beat. And if you want to see some real hard-hitting journalism out of Hawaii, Civil Beat, there's a Guam connection because one of the reporters is Anita Hofschneider, who came out here to do for about a month to do a series on Aparon. She did a bang-up job of it. Hofschneider takes us back to the German era in Micronesia. That's a name that the Germans brought with them, and of course we now recognize it's the Hofschneider name, not tomorrow. T. Aleman, tomorrow, right, Real Joe Cruz?
Ungan.
Yeah, so the Civil Beat really lays this out. So the chief and his wife broke all kinds of laws, and there were people in the police department who knew it and attempted to bring this to the ethics committee in Hawaii. And it didn't work because the prosecutor for the ethics commission, there's a commission, and they got rid of their investigator, and the chief, or excuse me, of their executive director, and the mayor wouldn't renew the contract for the investigator. Maybe it's vice versa. And the reason for that was because the ethics commission investigator got into some of the stuff that the mayor had done. So I think you can see the picture that I'm painting here, right? Okay, let's have an ethics commission, and it's going to work really, really well right up until the time that the ethics commission and its investigator and its director spot some manakilu is committing unethical conduct. Well, we can't do, no. Obviously, you people misunderstood what your job was. You're not supposed to be picking on the mayor and the chief of police and the prosecutor, etc. Bastano, stop that. And that's exactly what happened. So the story that I have in front of me that I used as a springboard here is now the Ethics Commission is examining its role, its own role, in the Kealoha corruption case. Did we do the right thing? Did we do the right thing at the right time? Did we do anything at all? And I've been following this Kealoha matter from the beginning. I didn't even know there was an ethics commission in Honolulu. So I think my answer is, no, you didn't do anything at all. You rolled over for the people that the ethics commission was supposed to expose. Things like this should not be surprising because people who are capable, government officials who are capable of committing ethical violations have the kind of frame of mind that would cause them to do unethical things to keep from being exposed as unethical. Right? If a person is a bank robber, he's not going to have any trouble not putting money in the parking meter in front of the bank that he's robbing. He's not worried about that at all. So that's exactly what happened here, that the Ethics Commission stopped. They were not even ethical themselves when it came out to uprooting the ethical violations of the chief and his wife, who was a top prosecutor in the prosecutor's office. So it gets us back to, if I can find it here. I should have it at my fingertips at all times, really. Yeah, here it is. Quis custodiet ipsos custodis. Quis custodiet, quis custodis. Who's going to watch the watchers?
Yes, the old Latin.
Uh-huh. Who's going to watch the watchers? And in Honolulu, the answer was Tadza. Nobody. Nobody's going to do that. Okay, let's bring that home. Okay, we have an ethics commission that's on the books. There's a statutory framework of what is the definitions of ethical and unethical conduct. The powers of the commission are spelled out, and the commissioners have been confirmed. That's where we are right now. Is that all we need to do? Nope. If this ethics commission is going to function at all, it has to be independent from the rest of the government. So if it's going to function at all, it's going to have somebody like an investigator, someone who knows how to do an investigation, someone of good character, someone who's incorruptible and skillful. And the Ethics Commission is going to have a staff, some kind of an executive director and some staffers in that office. Are we willing to pay for that right now? I don't know. Maybe we could get Tina Rose Munya Barnes to appropriate money from the Tourist Attraction Fund for it.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, I'll be back in just a few minutes here. We'll take this Ethics Commission up till the halftime break.
The summer of Jeep, Compass, Cherokee, Wrangler, Cars Plus in Mighty. Your new adventure starts now. Buy the 2019 Motor Trend SUV of the year and get a new Jeep Wrangler Sport for $268 per paycheck. Or get a new Jeep Compass Sport, only $167 per paycheck. Let them hear you coming in the new 2019 Jeep Cherokee. Buy for $205 per paycheck. And get financing as low as 1.99% on all Jeep models. Come see why you'll be kicking it at Cars Plus in Mighty. Driven by you.
It's important to have claims process that works for you. At Guahan Insurance Services, we make things simple and convenient. Same door you walk in to purchase your insurance is the same door you open to file your claim. We can't pretend that the car insurance claims process is fun, but we can promise a hassle-free and speedy recovery without any runarounds. For your home, auto, and business insurance, visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center on Marine Corps Drive in Tamuning. Don't forget to like us on Facebook or give us a call at 475-1162 or text 929-SAVE. That's 929-7283.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Okay, so here we are. Got about 8 minutes till the big halftime show. Real Joe Cruz, are you okay in there?
Yes, sir, I am.
Okay, I'm looking at Facebook here, and this is the post that I'm seeing on the screen. Free the Real Joe.
Oh, that's because I'm tied up in here.
Oh, okay, well, we'll work on that. We'll work on. I'll tell you what I'll do. About 1800, I will personally free the Real Joe Cruz.
All right, that sounds great, sir.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, come to work tomorrow, and you can have the next couple days off.
I appreciate that, sir.
We got a phone call coming in here, Real Joe Cruz. Okay, so one of the other posts I saw here was, why do you expect the Guam Commission to be any better? Who said that I did? I didn't say that I expect it to be any better. I'm just laying the foundation here for telling you why I don't think it's going to be as good. I think what we have here is a lip service undertaking and not much more. Well, let's see what, Lisa, what can you tell me about ethics commissions?
Oh, do we have a lot of time for that? What I think about ethics commissions?
Yeah.
I was actually just calling because, you know, I've been driving on Marine Drive and stuff, and I just want to know, do people understand the reasons for the lines that are put on the road?
Probably.
The markings on the roads actually mean something. If they were listening and when they got their driver's license, they would know that they can't just do whatever they want. They have to follow the lines on the road. So that's all I'm wondering. If people, do they understand what those lines mean? Solid lines, you know.
So people should be in one lane or the other, right, Lisa?
Well, don't speed around and then just start cutting in solid line lanes. There's reasons for that.
Okay.
So I just experienced somebody cut me off when they could have been behind me, but they had to be in a big hurry just to get around me to go nowhere.
Well, I hope it wasn't me.
No, I'm just saying.
Oh.
I was just wondering if people understand that the lines on the roads are not just decorations. They're not there for just because they wanted to paint the road. Every line means something.
Okay, I'll tell you what, Lisa, I'm going to do a public service announcement, okay? Are you ready?
I guess.
Yeah. Attention, please. Attention, please. Everyone in the Tall Tales International radio listening audience, when you're driving on Marine Corps Drive, pay attention to the lane markings. Don't swerve and cut all over the place like you're on some kind of ride at Disneyland. I hope that helps.
That's my gripe, because sometimes people just don't pay attention. And, you know, I'm sorry, but when I get out on the road, I've seen a lot of car accidents, and it's not a joke when you're out there, you know?
I know.
It's not really a joke. It can get very serious. And I hate for someone, just because they're not following the rules of the road, to hurt someone else, particularly me.
You're exactly right. Well, Lisa, I'll tell you what, you know I did my part, right? I gave it the old college try. So maybe you could call me tomorrow if you're going to be on Marine Corps Drive tomorrow. Call me tomorrow and tell me if the situation has improved or not.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I just had to get that off my chest.
Well, I'm glad you called. Thank you, Lisa. So long.
Okay.
Okay, so, yeah, we give those public servants, and, you know, I suspect when I use my authoritative public service announcement voice, that everybody out there in our international, there are probably people that were listening at home and said, I got to stop. I got to go out in my car and drive down Marine Corps Drive to make sure I'm doing it right. Okay, so back to the Ethics Commission. So our Ethics Commission, my suspicion is this, that the reason that we have an Ethics Commission, why the members were appointed, is for lip service only. So that the current governor can say, yeah, when she's running for re-election, you know, we had an Ethics Commission on the books ever since, and no governor ever appointed the members. I appointed the members, and now we've got a real Ethics Commission. And any reporter who follows it along and says, Governor, what is the track record of this Ethics Commission? How many complaints have they fielded? How many cases have they dealt with? How many conclusions have they reached? You know, Mr. Reporter, before I was governor, there never was an Ethics Commission because no governor ever appointed the members. Any other questions? Yeah. So it's not going to work. It's not going to work because we're not going to, and I probably would be right out there myself, hollering and screaming, if we ponied up $600,000 or $700,000 to give this Ethics Commission the kind of infrastructure that it's going to need to be functional. And even if we did that, you know, finding that investigator is a big order. Another thing to look at is this. The people on the Ethics Commission. I saw the names. Some of them I knew. Some I didn't know. Some will interpret what I'm going to say as critical. It's not. But it's honest, and that's this. Commissions like this are not self-starters. There has to be someone on that commission who has what I call juice to make it go. And that's juice is not something you buy in a can. It's someone who understands how to wield power and authority in such a manner as to accomplish things. And most people don't have it. You know, most people are more than content to be on the Ethics Commission. And when someone says, well, what are you guys going to do? Oh, right now we're just waiting for someone to tell us what we should do. And there it goes, because the confirmations were already held. Now, if we had that person that I'm talking about, the day after the confirmation, you know, that person would have called a meeting, would have elected officers, would have started on rules and regs and started thinking about an investigator and a place to hang hats and all that kind of stuff. But so far, nothing has happened. I thought I could finish this up by the halftime break, but believe it or not, Real Joe Cruz, I was wrong. This is the first time I've been wrong since 1947. And I thought I was wrong about something, but I was actually right. Still counts as being wrong, though. Okay, I'll be back right after the break to talk about the Ethics Commission.
This is a Fox News alert. Puerto Ricans cheer as the governor resigns. I'm Carmen Roberts. Jubilation in the streets of San Juan as the standoff between tens of thousands of demonstrators and Governor Ricardo Rosselló ends with his resignation. He delivered his message live just before midnight.
The president
necesitará la voluntad ciudadana y el apoyo de aquellas personas que trabajan incansablemente
will need the help
en pro de nuestra tierra.
and the support of everybody working around him or her. And right now,
esa persona sería
this
la actual
person
secretaria del
will be
Departamento
the Secretary
de Justicia,
of the
la
Department of
licenciada
Justice,
Wanda Vázquez.
Wanda Vasquez.
Speaking with a translator, Rosselló says his last day will be August 2nd. During his 5 hours of testimony before two House committees yesterday, former special counsel Robert Mueller gave Democrats some hope they still have a case against President Trump.
The Democratic chairman of the House Judiciary Committee pinned down former special counsel Robert Mueller on President Trump's claims.
Did you actually totally exonerate the president?
No.
But then went further.
Under Department of Justice policy, the president could be prosecuted for obstruction of justice crimes after he leaves office, is correct?
True.
Republicans attacked Mueller, alleging he was the one who violated long-standing Justice Department policies.
Fox's Catherine Herridge. Republicans also point out Mueller did not find the president guilty of obstruction and say it's time for the country to move on. President Trump calls Mueller's testimony all nonsense.
What he showed more than anything else is that this whole thing has been 3 years of embarrassment and waste of time for our country.
And Swedish prosecutors charged U.S. rapper A$AP Rocky with assault. He claims he was defending himself during a fight in Stockholm last month. This is Fox News.
Hafaday, this is Congressman Nicholas. Our office is currently visiting our villages, providing contact information for our office and taking any inquiries we may be of service with. All vehicles and staff are appropriately identified for your safety. Please feel free to let our constituent outreach team know how we can be of service to you, and thank you for your kindness.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
65 years ago, Bank Pacific opened its doors to our community. As we celebrate, we offer you a special 65th anniversary personal loan rate for as low as 4.65% for travel, back to school, a wedding. Do whatever you want with the money. During July, we just want to give it to you for as low as 4.65% APR. It's our birthday present to you.
Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal opportunity lender, member FDIC, conditions apply.
A Fox News poll shows Americans like President Trump more than the top congressional leaders.
At 45%, President Trump has a higher favorability rating than Speaker Nancy Pelosi at 39%, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez at 34%, or Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, who clocks in at 25%. A majority of voters also feel confident with the economy, 52% approving the chief executive's handling of it, but only 32% approve of his handling of race relations. 2/3 feel he crossed the line with recent tweets critical of 4 progressive freshman minority congresswomen.
Fox's Kevin Battle. 2 congresswomen introduce a bill to give the world champion U.S. women's soccer team equal pay.
The GOALS Act, or Give Our Athletes Level Salaries Act, was introduced by California Congresswoman Doris Matsui and Connecticut Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro this week. It would block federal funding for the 2026 World Cup, set to be hosted by the United States, Mexico, and Canada, until the women's national team is paid fair and equitable wages compared to the men's team. This as the Women's Soccer World Cup champs continue a gender discrimination lawsuit against the U.S. Soccer Federation over unfair and unequal support.
Fox's Matt Napolitano. Actor Rutger Hauer dies. He shot to international stardom as a replicant in the futuristic classic Blade Runner.
We're made as well as we could make you, but not to last. The light that burns twice as bright burns half as long.
Hauer died at his home in the Netherlands. He was 75. Chip makers helped lift the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ to record highs yesterday, but Boeing and Caterpillar grounded the Dow. The Dow fell 79 points. The NASDAQ rose 70. The S&P 500 gained 14. And repeating our top story, Puerto Rican Governor Ricardo Rosselló resigns. He's stepping down effective August 2nd. I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with a true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine. A bistro look that feels like home. Their menu features local and traditional flavors with a twist. From their famous Calaguan Hafa to fresh ahi poke salad and their award-winning barbecue ribs. Mezcla takes your favorite local dishes and serves them with extra flair that you'll only find at Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Stop by their newest location in the Grand Plaza Hotel in Tumon. For reservations, call 969-2652. Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
Weekday shopping just got exciting. Join the Agania Shopping Center's Shop and Win on Weekdays promo. Shop or dine at any ASC store or restaurant on weekdays from now till October 31st. Show your receipt at the ASC booth and win instantly. Every $20 spent gets you an entry form to win big at the monthly draws, including round-trip tickets to Manila, $500 ASC gift certificates, and more. See posters and print ads for more. Special thanks to Sky Zone, Fundamental Writers, Vince Schulers, and Wendy's.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
So here we are, another great halftime show here on Tall Tales. It means we're heading into the second half of another exciting, informative, educational, interesting episode of Tall Tales. And I've been opining upon the potential success of our newly appointed members of our Ethics Commission. I am not optimistic at all. Before the break, I gave you a little chapter and verse on how the Ethics Commission in Honolulu failed when confronted with one of the biggest political scandals in the history of Hawaii. They did nothing. Well, they did something. They backed away from it. And here, in order to have a functional ethics commission, you'd have to have an investigator, you'd have to have a director, you'd have to have a staff, and probably a little bit better statutory scheme than what we have right now. In fact, if you really wanted to do it, gold-plated, the way to do it would be to do it in a provision in our own Constitution, which, of course, the nationalists are dead set against, and no one has the political will to push. But a properly worded Constitution protecting the positions of the commissioners and the employees of the commission would be a start. But if the commission is merely statutory, of course, you know, looking at the worst case scenario, we've had some cases where there have been cases of ethical misconduct at the legislature. And if this commission decided to get involved with that, legislature could just abolish the commission. You know, a majority of the members of the legislature, 10 members of the legislature with no help from the governor could abolish the commission in a heartbeat. It's probably not a real good example because the legislature has its own ethical mechanism which may very well usurp the functions of our statutory election commission. But unless the election commission has its own investigator, its own counsel, its own staff, it's just going to be a nice, it'll provide nice bragging rights for Lulian Guerrero when she runs for governor for re-election by saying, yeah, I appointed all the members, and, you know, during my entire 4 years, there was not a single complaint, no ethical complaint against my administration at all. So, no, I don't think it's going to work very well at all. I don't know that the political will is here to come up with the necessary money to provide the staff. And then, you know, we've had some bad experience here with ethics. We had a really top-notch ethics prosecutor at the judiciary, and I don't know if you were watching, but they were not treated very well, and I think the message was clear to anybody who takes that job in the future: you better be careful, boy. So I'm not optimistic about this at all. Ken Leon Guerrero says, unless the staffers are civil service employees, they will be vulnerable to political pressure, as are the commissioners. And when he says civil service employees, I think what he means is what we refer to as classified employees. People who, when they are disciplined, have an appeal as of right to the Civil Service Commission. I think that that would be a less workable situation than having at-will employees under the employ of the commission itself. So that if they didn't do the job, if they didn't do the job, they could be cut loose rather quickly. But the mention of the word civil service reminds me of another problem that we have with our Ethics Commission before it's even started. And that is that the Ethics Commission is now housed at the Civil Service Commission. There was an ad, and there was a story in the paper that the Civil Service Commission will provide administrative support for the Ethics Commission until whatever. Not a good idea at all. Not a good idea. That commission has to be independent of the employment structure of the government of Guam. I have never been much of a fan of the Civil Service Commission. Perhaps it's personal. Back in the days when I was representing employees after the teacher strike, it seemed like the Civil Service Commission was really management-oriented. Then when I was representing management at the police department, it seemed like the Civil Service Commission was really employee-oriented. So maybe it's just sour grapes on my part. But my analysis of the Civil Service Commission is that there are people that are the so-called staff. And the staff how can I say this diplomatically? The staff are very good at letting the commissioners appear to be in charge. Yeah, I think that's the way I wanted to say it. And there are political undercurrents within that staff. So the worst incubator you could possibly find for a nascent ethics commission is to be playing house at the Civil Service Commission. Just not a good idea at all. I remind you of something else here. You remember when Yuko Hechanova, who was working at the public auditor's office, decided that she would like to run for public auditor when Doris Flores Brooks decided she wanted to run for Washington rep. But Yuko publicly said that she couldn't because she'd been advised by, you'll like this, Real Joe Cruz, she'd been advised by the Civil Service Commission that she'd have to quit her job. As though there's this gigantic person up there with a name tag, Civil. Hey, Civil, what's your last name? Service Commission. Yeah. Well, I got to the bottom of that, and I found out who gave her the advice, and I know exactly why the advice was dead wrong. Absolutely wrong. And Yuko finally got the correct advice and did run, but in the meantime, she'd lost a certain amount of momentum. I don't know if she could have ever beaten BJ anyhow. But to put the Ethics Commission under that roof, not, starting out with something that's got 2 strikes against it already, and then sending it up to the plate with a broken bat, that's not good baseball. So that's my analysis of our Ethics Commission. I don't think it's going to work. I don't think it'll even get off the ground because no one is going to want to go to bat for it, even with a broken bat, to try to get the resources that it would need to do a credible job. And even if it had the resources, I am very skeptical. However, it might work very well for Lou's re-election campaign. Okay, coming up, next item on the card here is the Democrats versus Mueller. M-U-E-L-L-A-R. Mueller. Pronounced how, Real Joe Cruz?
Mueller.
Yeah. Can you pronounce it Mueller?
I don't think that's correct.
Yeah, you could do it if you don't want to be correct, right?
I also have a friend that lives on Guam, and his last name is spelled the same way, and he calls himself Mueller.
Yeah. Well, if he's your friend, I would expect that he'd be smart enough to know how to pronounce his own name, right?
Yeah.
You're a little bit selective there, Real Joe Cruz.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, next time you see Mr. Mueller, tell him I take my hat off to him, not try to disguise himself with a name like Mueller.
You got it, sir.
Yeah. But, of course, if you want to be a rock star, you want a name that sounds really good, right? I don't, like Tony Curtis. You know who Tony Curtis?
I do.
Yeah. You know what Tony Curtis's real name is?
I do not.
Barney Schwartz.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Now, how far would he have gotten as a romantic lead in motion pictures with a name like Barney Schwartz?
I don't think far.
Not very far. So it's the same with Mueller. What does and you should be, you're the one that cracked the code on dormer. A dormer is what, Real Joe Cruz?
Dormer?
A dormer. What's a dormer?
Oh, someone who stays in a dorm.
Yeah, dormer, yeah.
Yeah.
So if a dormer is someone who stays in a dorm, what is a Mueller? Someone who drives mules,
yes,
right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, there used to be this kitchen cleanser called 20 Mule Team Borax.
Wow.
I don't know if you can still buy it anymore.
It's probably acidic.
Yeah, but the teamster who was driving the 20 mule teams, you could call him a Mueller.
Yes, sir.
So when Robert decided that he wanted to be a rock star lawyer, he probably said to himself, Bob Mueller? No. How about Bob Mueller? Now, what does a Mueller do?
Now we have something.
Yeah, because a Mueller is one, it's an interesting idea, Real Joe Cruz, but let me mull that over a little bit.
There, yeah.
And then I would be a muller, right? Thoughtful, contemplative, etc. But you didn't fool me, Mueller. Not for a minute. And you didn't fool anybody that watched the hearing yesterday either, Mueller. So I didn't have a chance to watch the hearing, but I read a lot of the commentaries, and even the lefties didn't give Mueller very high marks on it. One guy, a really good investigative reporter named Seymour Hersh, said before the hearing started that he knew Mueller, and he said that he talked with him recently, and that Mueller has lost his fastball. So, he can still stumble out to the mound, pick up the ball, and he can still throw it towards the plate. But he's not going to have that blinding fastball that he used to have when he was the United States attorney. And it showed yesterday, didn't it? Yeah, the best he could do yesterday was a couple of knuckleballs. Yeah, not a good performance at all. Part of the reason it wasn't a good performance, my analysis, is that the whole drill started out wrong to begin with. The whole thing was snake bit from the beginning. There wasn't anything there. We really didn't need a special prosecutor. And because we had one, I suppose he felt like he ought to at least go through the motions and spend $30 million, hire a lot of people, get a lot of earned media to make it at least look like he was doing something, like there was some activity there. But when it was all over, there really wasn't much of a product, except for Mueller's report. I read much of it, not all of it, but much of it. And that should have been enough. But the Democrats, that wasn't enough for the Democrats. Talking a little bit about, they should have hired Clint to help them market this. As you remember, Clint wanted to legalize recreational pot. So his marketing scheme wasn't, I want to pass this law that will allow you to grow and buy this drug that's going to make you high and make you feel really good. No. Nothing like that. He was going to start a new industry. Now, who could be opposed to starting a new industry, bringing new money into the island, etc.? So what the Democrats thought would happen would be that they could get Mueller and Mueller, both of them, to go through his report and voice the words in his report. Consider the optics. You're watching it on television, and Mueller is reading from his own report. So you're hearing his words, you're watching him say these words, and then the skillful Democratic congressman steer him around to the catchy parts, and they have him read that on screen. Well, it didn't work, because Mueller only answered leading questions. That's just about all he did. So they'd ask him a question that could be answered yes or no. So the optics just weren't there. It was Democrats jabbering all the time and Republicans jabbering, except the Republicans were a whole lot better at jabbering than the Democrats were. Mueller, if Mueller had been a football player, a lot of sports analogies today, real Joe Cruz. If we'd been talking football here instead of politics, Mueller would have gotten the Heisman Trophy for the most fumbles in any game. In fact, that's about all he did. If you could score a point for a fumble, he'd have really racked up the score. So he did not do well at all. And, of course, the Democrats have been banking on this for so long. They thought that this would be the threshold, the smoking gun that they need to go forward with an impeachment resolution in the House. It didn't work that way. So I listed this on the card as Democrats versus Mueller. Because after I thought about it a little, after I mulled it over a little bit, I think this is what's going to happen next. The Democrats are going to turn on Mueller. They're going to turn on him, and they're going to say, after watching his performance, it's clear to us that he was just a figurehead in that investigation. He let somebody else draw all the conclusions, probably a Republican, probably one of Trump's family. Or in the alternative, it was all there, but Mueller was just so incompetent that he couldn't get it out. So in order for the Democrats to come out of this winners, they're going to have to destroy Mueller. That's my crystal ball analysis, Real Joe Cruz. And the irony is that this would be the same Mueller that they've been PRing ever since he was appointed. Oh, yeah, he's a great guy. He's a former United States attorney, former director of the FBI, straight as a string. Oh, wait a minute, I'm not supposed to say straight, right? Yeah, yesterday I said a straight was Jack, Queen, King, Ace. I know it's 10 Jack, Queen, King, Ace. I was just talking too fast. Yeah. Well, if I would have leave to say it once. Yeah, Mueller, straight as a string, as honest as a day is long. That was the way the Democrats PR'd him up until now. But now they're going to have to say, if we'd have had a real decent prosecutor there, this would have turned out altogether different, because they had the goods on Trump. He just couldn't lay it out right. Trump is still a really, really bad person. And that's what everyone should have gotten out of the hearings. Okay, that's so much for Democrats versus Mueller. Going on to the squad. And the squad never ceases to disappoint. Judicial Watch files House ethics complaint against Representative Ilhan Omar over potential immigration, marriage, tax, and student loan fraud. Now, of course, I realize when I go into this, I've got the complaint here somewhere. Yeah, when I go into this, the guy who runs Judicial Watch is a guy named Tom Fitton. So he and then I, because I am reading this on to an international radio listening audience, I'm saying something that would not put Representative Ilhan Omar in a very favorable light. And Ilhan Omar is, are you ready for this? A woman of color. Therefore, I'm saying something about her that's not praiseworthy. Therefore, I must be a what, Real Joe Cruz? A racist.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, a racist.
I knew it.
Yeah. Because if you criticize a woman of color, what other explanation could there be? Right? Anyhow, this is the complaint. It's relatively short. From Tom Hitton. Dear Chairman Skaggs, Judicial Watch is a nonprofit, nonpartisan educational foundation promoting transparency, accountability, and integrity in government and fidelity to the rule of law. We regularly monitor congressional ethics issues as part of our anti-corruption mission. This letter serves as an official complaint with the Office of Congressional Ethics, also known as the OCE. Substantial, compelling, and to date unrefuted evidence has been uncovered that Representative Ilhan Omar may have committed the following crimes in violation of both federal law and Minnesota state law: perjury, immigration fraud, marriage fraud, state and federal tax fraud, and federal student loan fraud. Well, she didn't break the law of gravity, so I guess it's not all that bad. Such violations would also breach the Code of Ethics for Government Service, to which all federal office holders are subject. Any person in government service, here's a quote, any person in government service shall uphold the Constitution. Boy, that's a tough one for Omar right there. Will uphold the Constitution, laws, and legal regulations of the United States, and all governments therein, and never be a party to their evasion. Representative Omar's actions in this suspected immigration fraud, marriage fraud, perjurious statements on Minnesota divorce filings, and falsifications on her tax returns merit your immediate investigation. In the words of investigative reporter David Steinberg, facts describe perhaps the most extensive spree of illegal misconduct committed by a House member in American history. The evidence developed against Representative Omar was the result of a 3-year-long investigation in both the United States and the United Kingdom by Mr. Steinberg and his investigative reporter colleagues Prayas Samsundar and Scott Johnson. It is supported by information gathered from public records, social media postings, genealogy databases, computer forensic analysis, unaltered digital photographs, discussions between the investigative reporters and the subjects of the investigation themselves, and information supplied by confidential sources within the Somali American community. Document-based reporting by Steinberg has developed the following information. Representative Omar, a citizen of the United States, married her biological brother. Married her biological brother. Now, you know, I got to stick up for her here there for just a second. She married, you know, if someone, isn't that incest real, Joe Cruz?
I believe so, sir.
Yeah, but I think there's a defense there. Incest is okay if you keep it in the family.
I don't know if that's right.
Yeah, so she married her biological brother, Ahmed Nur Saeed Elmi, a citizen of the United Kingdom, in 2009, presumably as part of an immigration fraud scheme. The couple legally divorced in 2017. In the course of that divorce, Ms. Omar submitted an application for an order for service by alternate means to the state of Minnesota on August 2, 2017, and claimed, among other things, that she had had no contact with Elmi after June 2011. Okay, I'm going to take a stretch here, 7th inning, and then I'm going to come back to the squad. Just one member of the squad today, but coming back to it.
Hey, welcome to this Subway ad for the new club collection. How do you want it?
I'll take a book club.
Absolutely.
So, last week we sunk our teeth into Subway's meaty new release, the Steak Club.
I didn't finish it yet.
Oh, not again, Sandra. This week, it's the new Southwest Chicken Club, also by Subway. No spoilers, but there's a tasty twist.
Jalapeno cheddar bread and guacamole?
Sandra, get out. Subway, make it what you want.
Good ending.
Limited time only at participating restaurants.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
If you're a manager and you're not using the power of one-to-one meetings because you're not sure how to do them, get ready. I'm Jerry Roberts, and at 7:20 a.m. on The Ray Gibson Show, we'll give you and your workers the formula for making those meetings work right.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
So here we are back at Tall Tales, having just left the center field bleachers at Wrigley Field in Chicago, having engaged in the 7th inning stretch. And I'm dealing with one of the squad members here, Representative Ilhan Omar from Minnesota. You know, they have a real problem electing people in Minnesota. First, it was what was the wrestler's name? Jesse Ventura.
The Body.
Yeah.
Jesse the Body Ventura.
Yeah, they elected him governor. And then after that, it was Al Franken for senator. Of course, Al Franken wrote a book right before he resigned. The book was called Al Franken, Giant of the Senate, by Al Franken. Yeah, that was just before he resigned for a Me Too infraction. So I don't know what it is about Minnesota. They have a hard time with their electing people to office up there. Maybe they need to spend a little time in Wisconsin so they could get it right. So, see, I was talking about Omar marrying her brother, and then she filed a paper called an application for an order for service by alternate means to the state of Minnesota, claimed, among other things, that she had no contact with Elmy, her former husband, after June 2011. She also claimed she did not know where to find him. So I'm going to let this caller make his mark here, and then I'll come back to the squad. Hello, Mark.
Hey, buddy, how you doing?
Good.
Long time no talk.
Yeah.
Hey, I just wanted to comment on the first part of your conversation about the Mueller report.
Yeah.
I was watching, I say about half of it. I'm going to finish the other half tonight.
Mm-hmm.
But it's hilarious to state that Jordan from Ohio.
Yeah.
I like one of the captions that he should be tried for murder.
That Jordan should be tried for murder?
Yeah. Jordan should be tried for murder because he killed Mueller.
Yeah, he really did.
I mean, it's hilarious to think that everything that they've been chasing for, everything that the report came out with, all of that, they didn't find no collusion, but yet they found obstruction based on a report that shouldn't have happened.
And Jordan laid that out pretty clearly by pointing out the person that started it all, that Mueller knew who he was, and that he lied to the FBI. And he got absolutely nothing out of it. And he's the one that started the whole thing.
They pursued that, was it 23 Russians?
Uh-huh.
Knowing they're not going to get anywhere with that.
Yeah.
MIF said they can get a hold of, but yet they didn't want to move on it.
Right.
So it's kind of hilarious on that point. And plus, there is one thing to be said. Okay, and you commented that Trump was not a good person.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to agree with you with that, but clarify. Trump is not a good politician.
Well,
what Trump's done is contrary to what all other presidents have done in the past.
Yeah.
And basically, he doesn't give a crap what people say about him.
You know what I said, Mark? What I said, Mark, was that even though this whole Mueller report blew up in their faces, the Democrats, not me, are going to say, well, yeah, but still, Trump's not a good person. And my own analysis is, I don't know if he's the kind of guy that I would want to go out, for dinner with or whatever. I don't know if I'd want him to be my best buddy. Some of the things he does and says kind of rub me the wrong way.
Yeah, but the one thing.
Well, let me finish, Mark. Mark, hey, Mark, let me finish. Yeah, but it doesn't matter, because if you look at what the alternative was, I would take the person with the poorest manners in town over anybody on the other side in the direction that they were trying to move the country. So I just put my own personal peeves aside and concentrate on where we are here. The second thing that I would say about Trump is that he's been very effective, and he's undone a lot of the things that shouldn't have been done, and he's done a lot of the things that should have been done. And then finally, if I were flying from here to the mainland and I had a chance to talk with a pilot, And I found out that the pilot, didn't have very good table manners. He wiped his mouth with his sleeve and et cetera, et cetera. But I also knew he was an excellent pilot. I wouldn't care. I don't care about what the pilot does. I just want him to be a good pilot. And that's the way I feel about Trump.
But there is one point, though, I'd like to make.
Yeah.
The reason why everybody, to include the mainstream media, everything, the reason why everybody is so mad, pissed off, came up with the Trump deranged syndrome, happened in November 2016.
Yeah.
Because in one night, he made the entire media, as well as, I say, 35 to 40% of the politicians look like idiots and look like fools. Because when he came back and won the election, they spent all day and all night jabbering that he doesn't have a chance. He had a snowball's chance in hell of winning, to where he did quite a bit better than what a lot of people expected. They still haven't gotten over the fact that one person made them look so bad, and made them look all to really generalize it. He made them look all look stupid.
And they haven't forgiven him for that.
Exactly. That's the reason why he made us look bad in November. So he has to be impeached. Yes. He's not a good person. All this, but one thing I do like about the man, he is straight up. And when he says America first, he is the very first one I've actually believed. And I served under Clinton and Bush, my military career. He is the very first one that I actually believed. When he says America first, he meant America first.
Okay, Mark. Well, I agree with you. Good points.
I comment on Omar, but I'm running out of time.
Okay, thanks for calling, Mark.
All right, take care.
Yeah, so Donald Trump in a nutshell, he may not be the smoothest guy in the world. He may not be the best-mannered person in the world, etc. But every time I think about what would have happened had he not won, where would we be now? Okay, getting back to the squad here, where did I leave off? With Omar marrying her brother. So she filed this paper that said she hadn't seen her husband since June 2011. She also claimed that she did not know where to find him. The evidence developed by Mr. Steinberg and his colleagues demonstrates with a high degree of certainty that Ms. Omar not only had contact with her husband, but actually met up with him in London in 2015, which is supported by photographic evidence. Omar signed the application for order for service by alternate means under penalty of perjury. The very document that Omar signed on August 2, 2017 bears the following notation. I declare under penalty of perjury that everything I've stated in this document is true and correct. Of particular importance are archived photographs taken during a widely reported trip by Ilhan Omar to London in 2015, posted to her own Instagram account under her nickname Hamie, in which she poses with her husband, presumed brother, Ahmed Elmi. These photographs from 2015 are documentary evidence that, in fact, she met up with Elmi after 2011 and before the date she signed the divorce document in 2017, thereby calling into question the veracity of her claim that she had not seen Mr. Elmi since June of 2011. Representative Omar's potential crimes far exceed perjurious statements made in a Minnesota court filing. Omar's conduct may include immigration fraud. It appears that Representative Omar married her brother in order to assist his immigration to the United States from the United Kingdom. The immigration fraud scheme may have aided Mr. Elmi in obtaining federally backed student loans for his attendance at North Dakota State University. Mr. Elmi and Representative Omar simultaneously attended North Dakota State and may have derived illicit benefits predicated on the immigration fraud scheme. The state of Minnesota Campaign Finance and Public Disclosure Board has already determined that Omar violated state campaign finance laws for improper use of campaign funds. She was forced to reimburse her campaign thousands of dollars. More significantly, the board discovered that the federal tax returns submitted by Omar for 2014 and 2015 were filed as joint tax returns with a man who was not her husband. Well, at least she's fair, I guess. A man not her husband, a man named Ahmed Hersey. I guess she likes Ahmeds. Well, she was actually married to Ahmed Elmi. Under federal law, specifically 26 U.S.C. Section 7206.1, any person who willfully makes and subscribes any return statement or other documents which contains or is verified by a written declaration that it is made under penalties of perjury and which he does not believe to be true and correct as to every matter, shall be guilty of a felony and upon conviction shall be fined not more than $100,000 or imprisoned not more than 3 years or both, together with costs of prosecution. Representative Omar's federal tax returns must be examined to determine whether any additional falsifications were made. Mr. Steinberg et al. Engaged in meticulous research and reporting over a period of years. They have demonstrated with a high degree of probability that Representative Ilhan Omar has violated House ethics rules, federal and state laws. We call upon the Office of Congressional Ethics to launch an investigation into Omar's conduct immediately. So, that's 1/4 of the squad. That's Omar. And maybe tomorrow I can find something for Rashid Tlaib, who's a pretty good case herself. You'll recall that right after she was sworn in as a member of the House of Representatives, someone poked a microphone in her face and asked her about President Trump. And without batting an eyelash, Tlaib said, we're going to impeach the mother blanker. Yeah, member of the House. So I'll keep a watch on the squad. I'll probably have something on the squad every day here just to keep you informed as to what they're doing, because Trump's strategy, and it's a good one, is, and the squad is cooperating to make the squad the face of the Democrat Party, because the squad is making it difficult on any Democrat who is not as far to the left as they are, including Nancy Pelosi. So this is going to be, I shouldn't say fun, but it's going to be interesting to watch how this plays out. Okay, next on the calendar, on the card, is Lou versus Our Squad. And this is another journalistic masterpiece by Anumita Kaur, who yesterday I thought bordered on fake news the way she covered the relationship between the governor, Admiral Chatfield, and the tree. So this is a story in today's Daily News. Governor Leon Guerrero visited Northwest Field last week, where multiple discoveries of ancient artifacts were made since December 2018 during the construction of the live fire training range complex. The latest discovery at the complex was ceramic scatter and lusong, or mortar and pestle, in June. Quote, the tour was an opportunity to see and understand the context of these sites. Our administration continues to seek balance in preserving our cultural resources and ancestral heritage with national security, Leon Guerrero said. This is one of the many talks and tours with the military and our government officials. I'm grateful for the open communication so we can work on defining that balance together. More than 20 groups and 13 of 15 senators urged for a pause at the live fire training range complex in light of the multiple ancient discoveries. Leon Guerrero formally requested a pause only around the endangered Nelson tree. Rear Admiral Shoshana Tatfield, commander of JRM at the time, stated that current preservation efforts on the base of the natural and historic resources are enough. And this is where I went off yesterday. She's not telling the whole story. She's not telling the story that Chatfield says we're not even going to start on the range until next year, and we're going to move the machine gun range in deference to the Nelson tree. And then the next sentence, the governor said that there is room for more discussion regarding a pause, but that was so long ago, and it was actually overcome by Chatfield's concession to moving the machine gun range. The tour was led by Chatfield and Marine Corps Activity Guam officers, environmental director, and archaeologist. Attendees, along with the governor, included acting SHPO Patrick Lujan, state archaeologist John Mark Joseph, Carlotta Leon Guerrero, Vera Topaznia, and let's see, visits like this are, this is another quote, visits like this are vital to the historic preservation process, especially with projects of this magnitude. Governor Leon Guerrero brought up concerns recently raised by members of the community to ensure every effort is made to properly care for our cultural resources. I will maintain the same level of concern throughout the duration of these projects, said acting SHPO Patrick Lujan. Wouldn't you think that this would be the end of the story? What do you gather from the story? The governor has gone out to take a look. She's indicated that she wants to be very cooperative, that she understands, that she wants to find a balance, etc. And the new SHPO said that every effort is made to properly care for cultural resources. I will maintain the same level of concern throughout the duration of these projects. Good place to stop. No. There's one more paragraph. Here it is. At an oversight hearing last week, Senator Therese Terlahi urged the SHPO to stand up for the island in matters of the buildup. As the primary entity in negotiations with the military, the Preservation Office must press for preservation and not just mitigation the island resources, she said. So Anumita had to get in a little puff piece there for Therese Terlahi, even though it did not relate to the story at all. Okay, so I'm gonna grade this story. The editorial got the blue star, but here's your grade on your story, Anumita. Back home again in Indiana.
Hafaday, this is Congressman Nicholas. Our office is currently visiting our villages, providing contact information for our office, and taking any inquiries we may be of service with. All vehicles and staff are appropriately identified for your safety. Please feel free to let our constituent outreach team know how we can be of service to you, and thank you for your kindness.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
Viva Guam! As Guam celebrates 75 years of liberation, Nambo Insurance honors the brave heroes who dedicated their lives to fight for our freedom. With great pride, we salute those who made our liberation possible. At Nambo Insurance, they share the same dedication to serve our community, from offering reliable home, auto, motorcycle, and business insurance to providing friendly Hafaday service. Nambo Insurance is dedicated to serving Guam. From your Nambo family, happy liberation, Guam.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Hey, the home stretch. Here we are. That was Call to the Post at Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky. We're on the home stretch now, which means I got about 7 more minutes to wrap up. Hate to say it, but to wrap up another episode of Tall Tales. But we'll be back tomorrow. Okay, the next item on the card here is Che versus the United States. And the title is Bavakwa, struggling to encourage kids to use Chamorro. And I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but he points out that that kids nowadays are really caught up in English. And he says, Chamorro, let's see. They religiously watch a variety of English speakers on YouTube, for example, but probably wouldn't be interested if Tunose or Tan Ana made a YouTube channel to discuss traditional fishing practices or proper lisadzu etiquette. So he starts out, kvetching a little bit about it's not easy to keep the kids interested in Chamorro because there are a lot of things that are available in English that aren't available in Chamorro. That's something of a surprise, given that there are 30,000 speakers of Chamorro in the whole world. You'd think there would be all kinds of mass entertainment keyed to those who speak Chamorro, but not so. But true to his usual approach, Bavakwa has to use the 3 C's: Chamorro, culture, and colonialism. And here's how he does it. He says, I don't blame my kids for their place in this. Today, for Chamorros, we live with the language shift that has resulted from past colonial policies under the U.S. You gotta use the word colonial, colonizer, something like that, and you gotta blame the U.S. And then it goes on. The U.S. tried to punish and fine Chamorros into giving up their language. Now, how would you know that, Michael Bavakwa? They resisted for 2 generations, but eventually came to feel like the language wasn't for public use. But, of course, we can blame it on colonialism, and we can blame it on the United States. I just don't think that's correct. When I came here 56 years ago as a teacher at what was then called, it was Tumon High School, but I was in the afternoon session at George Washington. Everybody in my class that was Chamorro had at least one Chamorro parent. No question. They could and did speak Chamorro. And they spoke, it was their mother tongue, no problem. Very easy to find a kid who could speak Chamorro. Finding a kid who could put together 3 paragraphs of standard English, not so easy. Now, back in those days, I think we were laboring under a misapprehension that a young person could only learn one language at a time. And that if you wanted to learn English, knowing Chamorro would only interfere. Now, that's just not the way the human brain works. If you want proof, go to Europe, and you'll find street urchins shifting from Italian to Spanish to English in a heartbeat. But that's kind of the way we thought at the time. I don't think that the naval administration, in fact, I'm not going to say I don't think, I know that